Nobody likes to admit it, but everyone has been manipulated, and worse, many times they were grateful for it. The uncomfortable truth is that the world doesn't function driven by pure intentions, but by invisible psychological forces that few perceive. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he defended a politics guided by reality, not by ideals. And that's precisely why his teachings still bother people so much. Because they work. While most try to convince by being nice, those who understand the game influence without asking permission. And here's a statement that might provoke you. It's not the most intelligent who controls situations, it's those who best understand real human nature. Perhaps you believe manipulation is something dirty, distant, something villains use. But what if I told you that you already use weak versions of these tricks every day, only against yourself, accepting less than you deserve, reacting emotionally, silently surrendering power? Machiavelli warned, it is better to be feared than loved, provided one knows how to avoid being hated. The problem is that no one taught you how to do this without becoming a tyrant or a social idiot. Here, you will learn the exact opposite of what common sense dictates. Tricks that seem simple, even innocent, but that operate like mental blades when used with calculated force, an appearance of virtue, and constant adaptability. And before you think, this isn't for me, let me be blunt. Maybe you really aren't ready. These tricks require responsibility, self-control, and virtue to handle fortune when it comes your way. They can give you an advantage, but they can also expose who you really are. The question isn't whether they work, they do. The question is whether you'll continue to be manipulated or whether you'll finally learn to read the game before it's played against you. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos. It's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now, not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. An attentive mentor observes that human beings rarely react well to direct orders. It's not pure stubbornness, it's genuine human nature. Machiavelli already understood this when he advocated for a policy guided by reality, not ideals, because in practice, nobody likes to feel like they're being pushed. When someone believes they have made a choice, even within invisible limits, resistance falls. The mind relaxes. The ego feels respected. That's where the illusion of choice is born. Instead of saying, do this, the strategist offers two paths, both leading to the same destination. It seems simple, almost innocent, but it's profoundly effective. This connects directly to the idea of decisions based on real human nature, not on how we would like people to be. The trick is not in lying, but in structuring the environment. Just as a leader chooses the battlefield before the confrontation, whoever masters this technique defines the options before the decision. And ultimately, this is the calculated use of force, only psychological. The other feels freedom, but whoever controls the board knows exactly where the piece will land. In everyday life, this principle appears more often than one might imagine. An experienced manager doesn't ask if the project will be delivered. They ask if the team prefers to deliver on Thursday or Friday. A wise father doesn't say, tidy your room now, but rather, would you prefer to tidy before or after lunch? The choice exists, but the outcome has already been decided. This is the appearance of virtue in action. It seems respectful, sounds democratic, but maintains control. Machiavelli would say that this helps avoid being hated because no one feels forced. At the same time, it preserves authority, the balance between being feared or loved without slipping into hatred. In the professional field, this works in negotiations, sales, and leadership. Instead of presenting a single contract, two formats are offered, both favorable. The person chooses, signs, and still feels they have won. This is the key point. Human beings need to feel ownership. Those who ignore this lose influence. Those who understand it build virtù and know how to play with fortune when it appears. The mentor also warns that this technique requires constant refinement and adaptability. Used crudely, it becomes obvious manipulation and generates distrust. Used elegantly, it creates silent alignment. This is why solid leaders build their own loyal armies. People who believe they are there by choice, not by coercion. In the modern world, this applies to teams, relationships, and even how someone conducts difficult conversations. Instead of confronting, the scenario is structured. Instead of imposing, suggestions are made. And curiously, the more apparent freedom is offered, the more real control is maintained. This subtle game prepares the ground for something even deeper. When choice ceases to be guided and becomes invisibly restricted, desire begins to act on its own, and that's when the next move comes into play. An experienced mentor knows that nothing awakens more desire in human beings than that which seems out of reach. When something is forbidden, limited, or scarce, the mind immediately assigns it more value. This isn't poetry, it's pure biology and psychology. Machiavelli understood this when he advocated for decisions based on real human nature, not naive moral ideals. The theory of reactance explains it well. When someone feels their freedom is threatened, an automatic impulse to regain control arises. The curious thing is that this impulse doesn't need explicit orders. A simple, "this isn't for you," or "not everyone can do it," is enough. The strategist doesn't push. He takes a step back and watches the other advance on their own. This is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. By restricting, he awakens action. By denying, he creates movement. And all this without raising his voice, using a calculated use of force, almost invisible but extremely effective. In the practical world, this mechanism appears all the time. Limited edition products, invitation-only spots, content not available to everyone. All of this activates the same ancient trigger. A leader who says, "Not everyone is ready for this responsibility," creates more engagement than one who begs for participation. Here comes the appearance of virtue. The discourse seems selective, careful, even protective, but behind it lies strategy. Machiavelli would warn that this helps avoid being hated because no one feels excluded by whim, but rather by criteria. Desire grows because the person wants to prove they deserve it. It's the same principle as exclusive academies, closed investment groups, or selective mentorships. When someone believes they are entering something rare, commitment increases. And this commitment is gold for those who understand virtù and fortuna. When the opportunity arises, the desire is already ripe. The mentor, however, offers a silent warning. Scarcity only works when it's credible. Constantly feigning exclusivity destroys trust and erodes authority. Therefore, the most effective strategists alternate between openness and restriction, demonstrating constant adaptability. They know when to close doors and when to leave them ajar. This builds respect and creates followers who become almost their own loyal armies, because they feel they have earned their place. In personal life, this also applies. Those who are always available lose value. Those who know when to withdraw increase their presence. It's not about arrogance, it's about reading the environment. Human beings desire what they need to conquer, and when that conquest seems impossible, the mind begins to negotiate with itself. It is precisely at this point that the next strategy comes in, not with confrontation, but with something even more disconcerting: surrender. A truly wise mentor knows that direct confrontation is not always a sign of strength. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. Machiavelli observed that politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands a cold reading of the moment, not ego explosions. Strategic surrender is not submission, it's calculation. It's understanding that by agreeing in the short term, you gain time, information, and position. When the other believes they have won, they lower their guard. The tension drops. The game changes. This logic stems from decisions based on real human nature. People relax when they feel momentarily superior. That's when the strategist observes, adjusts, and prepares the next move. It seems counterintuitive, but it's pure calculated use of force. You don't push the river, you let the current flow while you choose where to step next. In practice, this happens in negotiations, family conflicts, and even professional discussions. A leader who says, "I understand your point, it makes sense," isn't necessarily giving in. They're creating space. Instead of escalating the conflict, they temporarily dissolve it. Machiavelli would say this helps avoid being hated because the other person doesn't feel attacked or humiliated. On the contrary, they feel validated. And validation is a powerful currency. Many lose influence because they want to win the argument when the real prize is winning the entire game. In corporate environments, for example, agreeing to a smaller proposal can open doors to greater control later. It's the appearance of virtue in action. It looks like humility, but it's strategy. Thus, the balance is maintained between being feared rather than loved, without provoking open resistance. The mentor warns, however, that strategic surrender requires emotional discipline and constant adaptability. Those who don't know when to retake their position become hostages to their own concessions. Therefore, solid leaders build their own loyal armies, people who trust in the commander's silence and patience. They know that momentary agreement is not weakness, but preparation. In personal life, this translates to choosing which battles to fight and which to let go. Not every provocation deserves a response. Sometimes the greatest power lies in not reacting. And when the other person realizes you haven't taken the bait, something uncomfortable arises in the air. An empty space, an awkward pause. It is in this silent interval that the next psychological weapon begins to act. An attentive mentor teaches that silence is never empty. It is laden with meaning. Machiavelli understood that in a politics guided by reality, not ideals, those who speak too much reveal their cards too soon. Silence, on the contrary, forces the other to fill the space with assumptions, fears, and projections. The human mind hates gaps. When it receives no stimulus, it creates its own narratives. And these narratives almost always work against those who are anxious. This is where decisions based on real human nature come in. In the face of silence, the ego becomes restless, self-confidence wavers, and the need for approval grows. The strategist doesn't need to attack. He simply sustains the pause. This is the calculated use of force in its purest form. No shouting, no impositions, just a firm presence. In practice, silence works in negotiations, conflicts, and even relationships. An experienced salesperson makes a proposal and remains silent. A leader listens to criticism, thanks the person, and doesn't respond immediately. This pause creates tension and shifts the power of speech to the one who waits. The other person begins to over-explain, justify themselves, and give in. Machiavelli would say that this posture helps avoid being hated because there is no direct confrontation or explicit humiliation. At the same time, it maintains authority, the delicate balance between being feared rather than loved, without appearing aggressive. Silence also sustains the appearance of virtue. It seems like maturity, serenity, self-control. But behind it, there is a strategic reading of the moment. Whoever masters silence masters the rhythm of the conversation. The mentor emphasizes that maintaining silence requires constant training and adaptability. The temptation to fill the space with explanations is enormous, but solid leaders trust the process and build their own loyal armies. People who understand that not every answer needs to be immediate. In everyday life, this means not responding to messages in the heat of the moment, not reacting to public provocations, and not constantly justifying decisions. The less you explain, the more authority you convey, provided there is consistency between words and actions. Silence creates an invisible mirror where the other person sees themselves alone. And when someone starts to see too much of themselves, the need for validation arises. That's exactly where the next strategy comes in, reflecting back not who the person is, but who they would like to be. An experienced mentor understands that few forces are as powerful as the human need to feel special. Machiavelli already observed that governing people requires decisions based on real human nature, not the polite version they display in public. Every individual carries an internal image of who they would like to be, more competent, more respected, more admired. When someone finds a mirror that reflects this ideal self, the connection forms almost instantly. This is not empty flattery, but strategic recognition. The other person feels, this person sees me. And when someone feels seen, they lower their defenses. This is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. The strategist does not create the other person's ego. They merely illuminate it. This subtle movement is a calculated use of force because it shifts emotional power to whoever controls the reflection. In practice, this appears in leaders who say, "You have the profile of someone who solves complex problems," or "I notice that you think beyond the obvious." And note, this is not generic praise, it's alignment with the desired identity. Machiavelli would teach that this technique preserves the appearance of virtue and helps to avoid being hated because the other person feels valued, not manipulated. In professional environments, this creates almost automatic loyalty. In relationships, it creates intense emotional closeness. Whoever masters this skill approaches the point of equilibrium between being feared rather than loved, because it generates admiration without explicit submission. The person begins to want to live up to the image you projected, and, silently, begins to act accordingly. This is where virtù and fortuna meet. When the opportunity arises, the bond is already formed. The mentor, however, offers a subtle warning. Reflecting the ideal self requires constant listening and adaptability. Those who misjudge the reflection break the spell. Therefore, solid leaders observe before speaking and build their own loyal armies based on an accurate reading of character. In real life, this means listening more than speaking, perceiving what the person values, and reciprocating with specific recognition. It's not pretense, it's a conscious strategy. Human beings fiercely protect their self-image. When someone touches it with precision, they gain access. But there's an invisible limit. When the mirror starts to seem too easy, the ego relaxes. And it's precisely at this moment that a small challenge, almost a cut to pride, reignites the inner flame. That's where the next technique comes into play. A wise mentor knows that few things provoke more movement than a direct challenge to one's sense of competence. Machiavelli understood that politics guided by reality, not ideals, involves recognizing human pride as the driving force behind action. When someone hears, even subtly, that perhaps they are not up to the task, something awakens within. It's not anger, it's a need to prove one's worth. The strategist doesn't accuse, only suggests doubt. This isn't for just anyone, or few can sustain this level, triggers an almost automatic response. This stems from decisions based on real human nature. The ego hates being underestimated. Here, the calculated use of force appears elegantly. It doesn't push, it pulls. The person seeks validation on their own, believing that the decision was entirely theirs. In the practical world, this technique is used by experienced leaders, mentors, and communicators. A teacher who says, "This usually separates those who only try from those who actually do," increases the focus of the entire class. A manager who comments, "This project requires emotional maturity," creates natural selection without needing to exclude anyone. Machiavelli would point out that this helps avoid being hated, because there is no direct personal attack, only an implicit criterion. At the same time, it preserves the appearance of virtue, since the discourse seems demanding, not offensive. The balance between being feared and loved is maintained. Respect grows, submission is not forced. In sales, this appears when someone says, "Perhaps this isn't the right time for you." Paradoxically, interest increases. The challenge activates virtue, and fortune finds fertile ground. The mentor emphasizes that this challenge needs to be rare and well-placed. Used excessively, it turns into disdain and breaks trust. Therefore, it requires constant adaptability and a keen understanding of the other person. Solid leaders know when to provoke and when to support, creating their own loyal armies that grow through merit, not empty pressure. In personal life, this means stopping asking for approval and starting to set standards. When you don't beg to be chosen, the other person wonders if they deserve to be there. This silent inversion changes everything. Human beings want to feel capable, but they also want to feel they have achieved something difficult, and when freedom seems total, without apparent challenges, a strange restlessness arises, a void that demands direction. It is precisely in this space that the last strategy reveals itself. An experienced mentor knows that absolute freedom does not bring peace. It brings anxiety. Machiavelli understood this when he observed that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, requires clear limits to function. When everything is permitted, nothing is safe. The human mind needs structure to orient itself. Without it, doubt, paralysis, and fear of error arise. Giving total freedom seems generous, almost virtuous, but that is precisely where the strategist acts. By removing explicit directions, he transfers the weight of the decision to the other. This is based on decisions grounded in real human nature. Human beings fear full responsibility. The silence of rules creates a psychological vacuum, and vacuums demand filling. This is an extremely sophisticated, calculated use of force. Control is not achieved by telling someone what to do, but by leaving them lost and unsure of what to do. In practice, this appears when a leader says, "You have complete autonomy," and then disappears. The team, without clear references, begins to self-regulate, seeking indirect approval. In relationships, it occurs when someone says, "Do whatever you want," and the other immediately feels the weight of the choice. Machiavelli would say that this technique preserves the appearance of virtue because no one can accuse the one who granted freedom of authoritarianism. At the same time, it helps to avoid being hated, since the discomfort arises internally in the other person, not from external imposition. Here, the balance between being feared rather than loved manifests itself silently. There is no explicit fear, but there is insecurity. Whoever dominates the environment becomes a reference point. Virtù and fortuna meet when the strategist perceives the exact moment to reappear and offer direction. The mentor emphasizes that total freedom should be used as a temporary tool, never as a permanent state. It requires constant adaptability to know when to let go and when to lead. Strong leaders build their own loyal armies precisely because they alternate autonomy with structure. In personal life, this means not controlling each other's every move, but also not dissolving into permissiveness. When you don't set limits, the other person starts to want you to set them. The absence of rules creates anxiety, the presence of direction creates relief, and it is in this relief that influence is consolidated. When someone realizes that you understand the game of freedom better than they do themselves, authority is established without visible effort. Now the inevitable question is no longer what works, but what you will do with it. Knowledge that doesn't translate into action becomes dead weight, and Machiavelli never advocated accumulating theory to feel intelligent. He spoke of politics guided by reality, not ideals, of acting with clarity, coldness, and awareness of real human nature. Every trick you've learned here is already being used every day around you. At work, in relationships, in the silent negotiations of life. The difference is simple and brutal. Some know what they are doing, others merely react. Which side have you been on so far? Reflect honestly. In what situations do you relinquish power without realizing it? Where do you talk too much when you should be silent? Where do you beg for acceptance when you could set the right direction? It's better to be feared than loved than to be cruel. It means being respected. Avoiding being hated isn't about pleasing everyone, it's about acting with emotional intelligence. Virtue and fortune favor those who are prepared, who understand the right time to advance, retreat, provoke, or disappear. True manipulation doesn't begin with the other person, it begins with self-control. And that requires constant adaptability, reading the environment, and the courage to abandon comfortable illusions. Now I'm returning the responsibility to you. Which of these tricks do you feel you most need to master? Which one, if applied today, would completely change your position in the game? If this content made you think differently, act differently, or see people more clearly, then you've already taken the first step. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue learning to play with clarity, strategy, and awareness. Because in the real world, those who don't understand the game always end up playing for someone who does.